Okay, second take. So if you're watching this video, you're wanting to know how to change the stepper motor or air core motor in a 2000 Silverado gauge cluster. So I'm sure you've watched other videos. If not, you can key up a couple other videos because I did not show the removal of the cluster. So you have to pull and I'm not too good at editing, so I got to do it this way. So of course you take the bezel off the dash that covers the gauge cluster. You put the key in the ignition, drop the gear shifter all the way down into low 1, and then you drop the tilt column all the way down. Then you pull the bezel off, the gauge cluster, or the gauge cluster dash bezel off that covers this and the rest of the dash. Pull that off, and you pull it off by just peeling it apart with your fingers, and it comes right off. Then you pull the 4 screws out that are 7mm. You pull the gauge cluster out, you unhook the wire harness, you pull it completely out of the dash, put the gear shifter back in park, and then you can put the column back up, or you can leave it. It all depends how you feel trying to get out. Then you go over to your workbench. You set your gauge cluster down on the workbench, and you pull up on these tabs here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, there's none on the side. Couldn't remember because the bottom one's got the side clips. So then you pull all those off. You pull your bezel off, lift it straight up. Then I've already got this apart, so if you'll see on the edge here, this clear plastic, go around the bottom and start lifting it up and pop it off. And then once you do, you pull it straight up, and that is your trip reset. You don't have to take the back off or nothing like that at all. You can just leave it like that and just pull this right off. Then you flip this guy upside down as a visual. This clear plastic goes all the way around. Kind of hard to look and video at the same time. That's what you want to stick your. I mean, I used a little teeny tiny baby screwdriver to stick in this gap here, and you just start prying it up ever so gently, because the tabs here on all the motors are what holds this down, along with the bezel. So you pull this off. On the needle, you get yourself 2 forks. And then with the 2 forks, that's not going to work. So with the 2 forks, you take them, pull up on the bottom of the needle evenly, and it pops the needle off. And because this is a spare cluster I have, I'm not going to do that. Even though this stepper motor is bad. I went with a company called US Dash Works. They're for the oil pressure motor or air core motor, whatever you want to call it, stepper motor, for this was $70. They refurbished it because story has it that these are oil cooled, and over the years the oil filled, something to do with oil in them. I don't know the exact story. But the oil in them evaporates, and that's what causes your gauge to go bad. So instead of them refurbishing it with regular oil, they do a different oil that will evaporate less quickly. So with the 2000 to 2002, I don't know about 99 and earlier, but on 2002, these stepper motors, take note on the writing, because I marked there on that one. So this was my experiment before I took mine apart. There's writing right there. That writing there, writing there, writing there, writing there. Writing on this side, and then on this side where the tack is, the writing is on this side. So make note on what direction the writing is and what the gauge actually says. You need, for a oil pressure gauge, you need a gauge that says P right there, where like the volt gauge says a V. I don't know if you can read that, but there's a V right there where it says like V32. It's upside down, so. And this one will be a let's see, it's an O. I think it's an O. I can't quite read it, but there's an, I think that's an O for temperature. The gas gauge is a C. Oil pressure is a P. The speedometer is a S. And the tack, here we go, that writing there. And the tack I don't know if it'll zoom in or not, or focus. And the tack is also an S. The speedo's an S. So you want to get the right indicator for the right gauge. So anyway, the fuel pressure, or the oil pressure, is a P. So on this one, particular one, you just take and twist it out. The needle's still attached to it, so you twist it out, pull it up, put your new gauge in, make sure you take note of your writing. See, that says P because that's oil pressure. Take and put that in the same spot. I marked mine with a black felt pen right there, so I knew where the writing went. Take and put it in, and then spin it, bam, it's in. Then you put your, so these hold the face to this other housing. You don't have to take none of that other housing off whatsoever. Just pull this top one out. So then you take and put this in just like that, with the hole covers the odometer reset. So I'm going to set the phone down because I can't do this with one hand. Then you just lightly push down and center the gauge cluster back down. And you know, I did my fingers, I pushed here, I pushed up here because there's the plastic on the top, and then I pushed over here with the two fingers there, and then maybe there and maybe there, and got it all cinched down. Then you take and put the bezel on. I can do this one-handed. And if you've got like an Escalade bezel, you got to watch the needles to make sure that it clears the housing, because the Escalade bezel is way different. Looks like it's got chrome little gauges, almost like retro to like 50s and 60s gauge clusters. So then you just take and push down on this, make sure all the tabbies are clipped down. Oh shit, no, I did something wrong here. So then you take the gauge cluster out to the pickup, drop it, put the key in the ignition, drop it all the way down to low, put it in the hole, attach the wires, turn the key on with it sitting up in the dash, the key on, the motor will center itself to 0. You get your needle and you center it on 0, and then make sure you've got it where you want it, and do it a couple different times, on off, to make sure that you got it where you want it. Then you can take and put this on. After you put the needle on, then you bolt it back up with the 4 holes. After you put the wire harness in as well, and then put the gauge cluster, or the gauge cluster bezel in, dash in as well, and then you are done.